A little background on why this topic is even on the program. In one of our planning sessions, we have planning sessions back in, I guess mostly in April, several locations in the state to get some ideas on some things maybe to include in this annual short course. And at the one I attended in Fort Worth, the subject came up of some of the cattle we're going to be talking about. And so decided to say a little about that subject this morning, and partly is just a matter of awareness. There's some of these names of some of these cattle you know already, some of them you're going to hear. Just a little bit of background on what they are and maybe how they can be used, some things like that. The tweeners, that's my term. When you're semi-retired, you got a lot more flexibility in what you do than I am actually a 49% employee of the system. If I say something you don't like or don't agree with, it's the 51% of my own private time. Okay, don't blame the system. They could be confined, as it says up there. They are designed to fill a gap between some existing types of cattle. Some people refer to these and other cattle that are developed from existing breeds by combining them as composites. That's one word you can use. So this is what I mean by tweeners. Andy already mentioned functional groups, and we're basically talking about developing some types of cattle that fit between some of these functional groups, and those are the bigger of the functional groups. So some way of getting between those groups is what we're talking about here. Now, this term is new maybe, but are this concept new? No, it is not. It's actually been around for at least 100 years. What we call our American breeds, Santa Gertrudis, Brangus, Beefmaster, they were developed as tweeners between British types of cattle and straight Bos Indicus or Brahman types of cattle. When the Brahman types of cattle were first brought in, the Zebu humped cattle into Texas, the existing Angus Hereford Shorthorn that were thought to be, the quote best beef breeds, they didn't work too well down in that country. But some people said, well, this is going a little too far, so they wanted to create something in between. So that's how things such as Santa Gertrudis and these others were developed. And it was the first one roughly 100 years ago. So that's a type of tweener. I'm going to say that we've got two basic types of these new tweeners, if you want to call them that. One group is this. They're continental British. And they're basically between a fourth and three-fourths of a continental breed, or could be more than one, and British. Most of them at this point are a half of each, because that's the first, what you get to start with is a half. And this group has no Bos Indicus, no Brahman background. Okay? All right. I'm going to go through here. What you'll see on these, and some of these slides are going to be a little low. I apologize. I didn't realize we were going to be in this room. I thought the screen would be higher, so there may be some text down at the bottom of some of these slides. You may have to look around a little bit. I'm going to limit this talk to cattle that have a unique name, not just X percentage cattle or that kind of thing, and that are part of an association program. Okay? In other words, a single breeder that might be developing something, I'm not going to include those. That's basically a CYA move. Okay. Now all the way through here, what you're going to see is the association that's involved. Okay, and then the red will be the name that you're going to see, that you'll see. And in every one of these slides, I've got exactly out of the association, in most cases bylaws, but they're exact, and that's why it's in quotes, exactly what they say is required for what we're going to be talking about. So there's, and I'm going through them alphabetically by association. The pictures that you're going to see, I contacted every association and asked them to send me something that they wish to use, me to use to represent visually their cattle. So there's a few exceptions, but most of them came from the association. The Bronby Beef Builder, at least a quarter, no more than 7/8 Bronby. I'm going to say most of them are probably, at this point, probably half Bronby, and probably a pretty high percentage of them, the other half is probably Angus, okay? All right, Kianina Association, Key Angus. They actually have got 3 others. They've got a Keyford, that's a Hereford, and some others, but they're pretty small, almost none of them around. This is the one that's predominant. Black with any percentage, Kianina and Angus or Red Angus, and no more than 1/16 other breed. So that's a lot of range, but again, I'm thinking a lot of them are probably in the half and half, are tending toward higher percent Angus. Okay. Out of the Gelbvieh, there's a Balancer. They are a quarter to 3/4 Gelbvieh, a quarter to 3/4 Angus or Red Angus, and no more than 1/8 of any other breed. I think you're kind of seeing a pattern here in what a lot of these continental British combinations are. Limousines called the Limflex. At least 1/4, no more than 3/4 Limousin. At least 1/4 Angus or Red Angus, no more than 1/8 other. Again, a lot of them are half and halves. Here they're specifying the exact British breed, except for a possibility of an 1/8 that can be included. Main Anjou, there's something called a Maintainer, and it simply says 1/4 to 5/8 Main Anjou. So it could be a lot of different things, but a lot of them are in this half and half, or that kind of a range, and may have some other breeds in them. The Salaire, they call theirs Optimizer, 1/8 to less than 3/4 Salaire. Again, a good bit of range is possible, but most of them probably half and halves. And then Simmental, the Sim Angus, is the most numerous of these, and that's going to have some bearing on some things I'm going to say in a little bit. At least 1/4 and no more than 3/4 Simmental, at least 1/4, no more than 3/4 Angus or Red Angus. So I'm calling this group Continental British Tweeners. In effect, it's probably to a pretty high degree Continental Angus Tweeners, okay? For whatever reason. I threw this in here and didn't realize that Andy was going to discuss this subject. You know, these Smokies, that's in a lot of cases that's a pretty popular. So why hadn't there been a tweener created? Well, Andy told us you can't get true breeding once you go beyond that first. You can't get a true breeding color pattern. It's probably the biggest reason that we haven't seen a movement in this direction. So the other primary group is our American with either British or Continental. And for my definition, this will mean less than 1/4 Bos Indicus or Brahman. Currently, most often probably 3/16, with the remainder British or Continental or maybe both, okay? Now this set of tweeners is designed to fit between American breeds, which are typically about 3/8 or so Brahman, and a Bos Taurus, either a British or Continental breed. So that's where this group fits. The Beefmaster actually has 2 that could be used. The Advancer, half or more registered Beefmaster, half or less other registered. Then they have a program called E6, but it's probably more oriented toward commercial female business than maybe the Advancers are. That heifer down there, the information that was sent to me from the Beefmaster Association, that was a Beefmaster bull on a Red Angus. So that gives you 3/16 Bos Indicus. Ultra Black, or ultra red out of the Brangus Association, and it simply says the requirements: animals of Brangus breeding and Angus breeding, black or red. Okay. The Bronte Association has a couple. I did not receive a visual for them and wasn't able to find any. They've got a couple. One of them's a Braunbray, which is basically a Bronte and some Bosendicus influence. And then there's one they call Simbrave, which has some Simmental in on it. Charbray, these are the requirements. So you could have a 3/16 Bosendicus. I used these two. I think one of them probably shows visually a little more Bosendicus than the other one on the right. I know the picture on the right came from Australia. It's kind of my impression that Charbray, there's a good many Charbray used in Australia for whatever reason. Gelbvieh Southern Balancer. These were sent to me by the association. My associate who's out in Fort Stockton said that looks a lot like his part of the world, or southern New Mexico or something. I don't know where they're from, but that's the requirements for them. The Red Angus Association has an Angus Plus program. You'll see some cattle with that name applied to them. You can see there what's involved. It says down at the bottom at least 4% Brahman. I think that probably meant at least 4% Bosendicus, not necessarily Brahman, but could be. Black and a red. Sandy Retrudis has a program called Star 5, and this picture was sent to me. Again, I think it's more of a commercial female type of a thing than it is designed to be maybe to produce bulls, but it could be used for that purpose. And Simmental, the Semangus HT, or heat tolerant. You can see the requirements up there. The picture on the lower left was sent to me from the association, and I thought I wasn't going to get one back from them, so I asked a couple of people that I knew had these cattle, and they happened to be sitting here on the front row. Sent me these two pictures. The black one in the upper right, Beth Mercer here provided me that picture, and I believe that's a half and half Semangus bull on a Brangus cow. Is that right? And then Sally Buckskemper sent me the red, and that's a Semangus bull on a purebred Simbra, which is a 5/8 Simmental, 3/8 Brahman cow. Is that right, Sally?
Actually, it's a Semangus HT bull on a purebred Simbra.
Oh, okay. All right. Some question I get sometimes is, are these breeds? You know what? Somebody got any opinion on that? Are these breeds? No opinion, huh? They're tweeners. Well, what is a breed? Here's some definitions right out of some textbooks, the typical kind of thing that you see. But I think if you'll just read through there's not anything hard and fast. It's just kind of a general statement. Sometimes you see mention of official breed recognition. Our breed was officially recognized by the USDA and such and such. Is there any such thing as that? At one time, the USDA published a bulletin on breeds. But later in it, I know the 1975 edition, they no longer published it. It had this disclaimer down there that basically said, whether or not you're in here, this is no official recognition or lack of it. All right? So I think we can sort of conclude the USD has not. Now, there is one thing. The USDA designates some foreign breed registries for import duty assessment. But those are almost all registries on the British Isles for cattle of that type. So I think we can safely say that the USDA does not officially recognize breeds. Now the Canadian government does. And they say that they must have distinguishing characteristics and be genetically stable from generation to generation. But they go on to say there's no good definition of that. So there again, we're dealing with not black and white. This is taken right out of a recent publication that looked at relationships of breeds worldwide using DNA genomics. And this is what they said: we use breed and population interchangeably because there's so many different definitions of what a breed is worldwide. So I think we can conclude there's really not registry. That could be one definition of whether something is a breed, if it's got a registry. A number of years ago, I was going to write an extension publication on breeds, and I realized, I'm going to have something hard and fast that I can go on to decide what I put in this. Another CYA deal. And so I decided to use whether there was an existing breed registry. Okay? But you can see down at the bottom, the only thing really that you need to start a breed registry, and again, they're not very, very specific. And we run into situations where you can find situations where there's basically the same cattle that are called, maybe got a different name, or that cattle are called the same name that have more than one registry. So that can be confusing. If you have a national genetic evaluation, an EPD system for these cattle, could that help maybe in your mind call them a breed? Most of these that we've discussed do have EPDs for these cattle that have been created in recent years. So how many breeds are there? The National Association of Animal Breeders has got 123 codes, but that's to identify semen. That's not officially recognizing whether something is a breed or not. Some of you may be familiar with a very good website maintained at Oklahoma State on breeds, and they list 268 in the world, and that's about the same number in a good reference that is available, Mason's World Dictionary. So there's a lot of breeds around by whatever definition. I'm going to conclude this section with this. This came out of a paper in 1915. The title of it was, "What is a Breed?" And the author said, it's a group of domestic animals termed such by common consent of the breeders. In other words, a breed could be whatever you say it is. Okay? And that's 100 years ago, or 99. Now, in these types of cattle, some of them have gotten into multiple generations. That is, you make a first cross and then you continue beyond that. And Andy's already talked about this some. Some people think it takes at least 3 generations of that to legitimately call something a breed. Well, okay, if that's your definition, that's fine. Andy mentioned that once you go beyond the F1, you lose some heterosis. That's another question that comes up in these multiple. Once you get beyond the first generation, what are you getting into as far as just the heterosis? You lose a half theoretically in that first cross, and then from then on, there should be no reduction. By the way, Dr. Sanders is going to discuss this some in some of his work, and finding maybe there's some that's not doesn't exactly hold quite as hard and fast as we once thought, especially in cattle with some Bos indicus in them. He'll be speaking first on the program in the morning. All right, what effects we get in combining these? We're going to combine these, and I've taken the discretion of from here on, or at least in part of this, I'm going to use the Sim Angus as kind of a base for talking about some of these things, and my CYA is that it's the most numerous one. Okay. Now, if you did this when that breed up those cattle up on the left first came in about 45 years ago, and where I'm not going to say that was the average Angus in the late 60s, but there were some like that because that's when that picture was taken. Well, if you combine cattle, those types of cattle, then that intermediate would have been that cross would have been an intermediate for practically anything you want to talk about, any production trait.
If it had gotten born.
If it had gotten born, well, that's okay. Andy used this. Well, he had all the breeds that Clay Center has looked at. This I want to look at just if you look at the black That line is Angus, yearling weight, okay? And my Simmental is here, okay? You see the Angus and Charolais, by this estimate, are the same now in yearling weight and a little above. Completely different on this one trait than when the breeds were first introduced. Milk, a similar kind of a thing. Here's Angus, and there's your Simmental. Pretty much.
Back on the Angus, how did it get so big?
Just by selecting
By itself.
sires. Now, sir, you've brought in something that can't be discussed. At least by this speaker, before this group. But no, to be, it's just single trait, not just single trait, but heavy selection, AI and embryo transfer to some extent for just increase in size, just using the ever larger and larger and larger. And for some of the more prominent breeders, turning over generations very quickly by using nothing but yearling bulls. And so that's basically how it's happened.
But they did, well, there were some larger animals put into the gene pool.
Okay.
That's when I was in school at Oklahoma A&M at the time.
I'll refer to this gentleman's question to you after we get through here, okay? But that's not true in all traits, okay? Angus or yearling weight, mature weight milk. I went in and looked at, using the association data that's available to anybody. For marbling right now, purebred Angus averaged 1.56 units higher than a purebred Simmental. That's the difference between the very low end of small and the middle of modest, the next, which is the minimum degree to get into certified Angus beef, for instance. But on ribeye area, purebred Simmental average about 1.5 inches larger than purebred Angus, even though, according to the U.S. Meat Animal Research Center data, they're about the same in weight, okay? So they're still more muscular, higher level of, and fat thickness, the purebred Simmental average is still considerably below Angus. So I kind of went through here and looked in marbling, and I looked through the entire most recent Simmental sire summary and compared it to Angus. There was one Simmental sire that was almost to the breed average for marbling for Angus, okay? Ribeye area, there was about 2,700 Angus sire. 1% of the Angus in the most recent sire summary had a ribeye area as high as the average Simmental, okay? And fat thickness, there were no Angus sires with fat thickness as small, as low, thin, as the Simmental breed average. So if you when combining these breeds today, and that's a purebred Simmental on the left and a purebred Angus on the right, using average cattle in the breeds, you wouldn't expect a whole lot of difference in weight and milk probably, but you'd still expect a big difference in some of these other important traits. How are we going to use these tweeners? When I decided, or we decided that this would be a subject discussed, I thought I'd spend a lot of time on this, but the further I got into it, the more I decided there's really not probably much time needed to discuss it, because first off, it's going to depend on the percentage of the different types included in the combination, obviously. For your continental British types, your Sim Angus, etc., the half-bloods are probably going to be used pretty much similar to the way that British sires have been used, as far as in different breeding programs, different types. There'll probably be some that are used in basically just a straight bred type of a thing, or some going to be used in crossbreeding, different ways. And your American with a British or Continental, that is about a 3/16. They're also probably going to be used like the British or Continental breed that goes into them, where some heat tolerance is desired. I think that's where they're going to fit. Now, What's going to be their ultimate impact? At this point, I think it's too early to say, but some of them are already a significant part of their association's registration. The Assembly Wade Schaefer, the Simmental, executive secretary, whatever his title is, told me that he hadn't looked recently, but he thinks of their total registrations right now that Sim Angus are running about 40 to 45%. And he expects them to pass purebred Simmentals eventually. So just strictly from the standpoint of numbers, they're going to be important. And then their ultimate impact, it's going to depend a lot on how they fit into individual people's breeding programs, where you're located, what's actually the breed makeup of those cattle. That's going to be those things that'll probably have a lot to do with the ultimate impact. Are they needed? Are they even needed? Well, I don't know, but evidently there's some people that think they are, and they are somewhat different. They provide some niches, so we'll see how important they become in the U.S. beef population. That's it. So as I say, our main purpose was just to have some awareness. You'll see these names. If you haven't, you're going to see them more as to what they are and where they came from and maybe possibly how they might be used.